Morning, guys. Welcome to the round 12 review of Footy Rants, where we've seen some vital wins for clubs like the Warriors, the Raiders, and the Parramatta Eels. We're going to move straight into some video footage now, so bear with me. So yeah, we've seen the first game on Friday night. We had the Roosters up against Para. One thing that I was really looking for from this Parramatta outfit, from the Roosters outfit leading in was Robbie Farah, Reynolds, and Sutton to take charge. Reynolds' kicking game again, it didn't deliver. He put that one out in the full. There's a few that went dead. John Sutton, wanted to see that running game that we got a little bit of a taste of in Perth last week against the Storm. Sutton ran for a total of 50 metres in 6 runs, so that wasn't evident. So I didn't get to see that either. All the Burgess brothers came up with an error. Farah didn't play the full 80, which indicates he wasn't playing to the best of his abilities that we've seen out of the last 3 weeks, and I really expected him to step up after getting snubbed from Origin. So, that really doesn't do him many favours around Origin as far as getting picked. Should anything happen to Pete's this Wednesday now, Origin's this week. So keen. But the positives for Parramatta here, we see, Gutherson and Mitchell Moses, getting that little bit of a combination together, which is pleasing before we see Corey Norman come back. And I just want to touch on that just while we're on that video there. This isn't the actual footage, but you can see the disdain with Michael Maguire here. He's not a happy bloke, and you can't really blame him. You look going into I just want to pause that there. You're going into a game at halftime, 18-0 down. Like, what do you say to your troops? That's evident that there was just a lack of effort there. The fact that they end up only going down by 6 points and scoring in this flurry. So we see that they don't get their first points until the 48th minute here. And we'll play that through. And this is one bloke for Parramatta. I keep saying Parramatta. One bloke for the Rabbitohs that keeps turning up week in, week out at the moment, and that's Angus Crichton. He's such an athletic-looking bloke. I mean, I know he nearly gets gunned down here, but he's got about 20 kilos on Kaiser Pritchard, and does really, really well to ground that ball too. On another angle, he nearly drops it. So we see here Mitchell Moses exploits that short side quite well. And I guess that's the downside of having some bigger bodies at times. Sometimes they're not as mobile. Here we see John Sutton trailing on the inside. He's left for dead. And what about the finish of some of these wingers at the moment, like fair income? I know people say it a lot, every weekend, but they're just freaks. Josh Hoffman, he had a massive last 20 minutes and was probably the reason why Parramatta went on to win it. How this was called a forward pass is absolutely beyond me. It's disgusting. That should have been a 28-10 scoreline. That they shouldn't have scored here. This shouldn't have been a try. The Rabbitohs shouldn't have got the opportunity to go around and score that try at the opposite end of the field through Alex Johnson. But credit to them, they stuck with it and they snaked that try. And Alex Johnson, for me, it's a shame that he's missing out there. Playing a bit of fullback while GI's away. I think purely based off those efforts, and I imagine that would have been a lot of the content of Michael Maguire's spray after the game. If you haven't seen it, I recommend you go see it. I couldn't quite strip the video to chuck it into the review highlights here, but it's a fair barrage, and it's one of those silent dressing shed moments where the coach just sort of storms out. But yeah, you'd have to think that it's a lot to do with just that effort from his side, especially with the experience that was still in that team. And you're coming up against a Parramatta side that is still gelling now that they've got, their star halfbacks out. They've got a new half in from a club, and it's only his second game back. And you exploited him so well when he was at his previous club only a few weeks ago, and now you turn this up. So they beat the Tigers 28-8, and I know it's a different side. You can't just say, oh, but Mitchell Moses is in the team, so we're playing the Tigers again. But that effort from blokes like your Burgess brothers, Farah, Reynolds, like they've all played in grand finals. You know what I mean? Sutton. It must be so frustrating as a coach, and to an extent, I'm sure in the back of his mind, it's definitely something that he wouldn't admit in public. But the more and more of these performances that they keep tossing up with the experience that they've got in their team, it's probably more eggs in the basket that Maguire's looking for a new job. You know what I mean? I hate that the coach gets scapegoated in a lot of these situations, and I think it's easy for players to start to conform and be like, oh, fuck this guy, like he's revving me for this, that, and the other, and it's quite easy to form this group opinion about a person and try and oust them, and that's not to excuse coaches as well. I've been a part of sides where the coach is asking ridiculous things, or isn't communicating very well with certain players, and you can't treat every player exactly the same. You've got to have the ability to talk to a person one-on-one, get to know the ins and outs of their daily life. I think even more importantly, to be honest, at an NRL level, because they're full-time professional. But on the other hand, what are they doing in all that downtime? Are we, as a coach and a club, an organisation, are we doing enough to fill that void, that vacuum of that time, that downtime, to fill it with effective activities? So, it's going to be an interesting next, probably 9 months at that club, the Rabbitohs, and whether or not Maguire's going to be at the helm, because you're watching week in, week out at those post-match press conferences, and he looks like he's just getting really, really worn down, unfortunately. You don't like to see anyone's health come at a cost of at the end of the day. It is a job, but it is also a game. So it's pretty unfortunate. This just comes down to effort, I think. 22-16, that they had it. If they just started, 48 minutes it took them to score, and then they didn't score again until those last little barrages within the last 7 minutes. If they use that momentum off that Crichton try, and that's a big body that's putting in that effort to run 90 metres and score that try. Not to mention, so he ended up with 177 metres, 12 hit-ups and 30 tackles, as well as that try, Angus Crichton. That's a bloke that's working his ass off. I don't have Sam Burgess' numbers, but he was another one who, as always, is always working his ass off. You need to play off the back of that momentum, and it just didn't happen. So, they're going to be looking for some answers, I think, this week, the Rabbitohs, and I'm not sure where they come. So, anyway, moving forward into our next game, the Warriors versus the Broncos. It would have been cool being over in New Zealand, that welcome home a legend in Benji Marshall there, as we see him run out onto the field. It was just a case for the Broncos of a few just fundamentals, really. They completed at 59%, 15 errors, and had 20 more missed tackles. You're not going to win too many games when you're winding up with those sort of stats, especially when the spine that you're coming up against is the New Zealand spine. And we see here Shaun Johnson doing what Shaun Johnson should be doing more of, taking on that line. I don't really think he's a genuine halfback. He's probably more of either a running six or a fullback than a halfback, I believe, because he just cuts you up. You see there when they're playing well, he ran for over 100 metres this game. I think he ended up with 130, and you see the space that he creates here, and Nico Klokstad fucks that up. He drops the ball over the line, unfortunately, but as long as Johnson is the man that's creating those opportunities, all you can ask is for your men to finish that job. So outside of that, if I'm Wayne Bennett, I'm not too disappointed. But how good was this? This is a Sean Johnson kick for Roger Tuivasa-Sheck. You know, that's what you want to be asking more of. But yeah, again, steering back to the Broncos and Wayne Bennett, you just want to work on those little fundamentals and make your one-on-one tackles. Like we see Isaac Luke just steam through a gap there on the right edge of the Brisbane defence. You know, if he's jumping out of dummy half, he's running. You know, and that just sort of comes through inexperience with a lot of these Broncos, and we knew that was probably what was going to happen to them and what should have happened. But what they can hold their heads up about is the fact that, you know, they hung tough this second half. They only went down 12-10, so they've got the ability, with the experience that they did still have out there. You know, you have a look at this Benji Marshall brilliance. He gets on the outside here, and that's just desire. You know, flicks that ball out while he's still off the ground. Ben Hunt pushing up like a good halfback should, and James Roberts just the opportunist that he is. And again, we see the crossfield kick. Like, there's some really, really stark creativity that was still happening for the Broncos. You know, you still got Ben Hunt. You know, the amount of players that were never going to be a write-off. Even at that point when it was 22-10, you thought, oh, if any team can score points and score points quickly, you know, the Broncos are definitely capable on their given day, but their forwards just didn't get enough of a roll on there. The Warriors did enough, and they actually got a lot of spark from Sam Lasone and Albert Vete off the bench. They both ran for over 100 metres, and they only played, you know, between 30 and 40 minutes respectively. And a lot of the Bronx forwards, I think only SASA and Blair ran for over 100 metres. So even Corbin Sims was kept under. I think that his stats were probably the worst they've ever been. It's the longest he's played for a long time. So, you know, go figure there. When you're keeping guys like that sort of quiet, you're going to give yourself every opportunity. And I think the fact that they were on the back foot so much in defence, the Broncos, and that was evident in the running meters from their back five. Pretty much all they were doing was bringing out of trouble a lot of the time in that first half. It doesn't really leave much in the tank of those experienced guys, because they're obviously not really going to have the trust with some of those guys that they haven't played a lot of footy with, so they're going to make that extra effort to work harder in defence. So yeah, it was a bit of a contrast. I think once they found their feet, they were right, the Bronx, but it was a case of too much too early for the Warriors, and that's what stung them that first half. You know, had that been a different sort of story, had they gone down 12-10 at half time, you know, the Warriors probably start doubting themselves a little bit. I'm not sure if they toss up some of those tries, go looking for those Larry outcomes like they did off the back of Sean Johnson. But regardless, like I said from the top, it was good to see the Warriors get back in the winners' circle. It was an opportunity that they definitely need to take, and obviously one that Stephen Kearney probably relishes a little bit, getting one over his old mentor in Wayne Bennett, despite playing a well and truly understrength side. So, yeah, look, again, talking about a momentum-based club and how much they rely on the momentum of things going well and continuing to build on that week after week. This may just be, you know, just that little carrot. Hey, this is probably the more fullest performance that we've put together in at least a month. You know, they played that period, even when they were losing games against like the Raiders, Storm, Roosters. They were in all of those contests. Yeah, so, you know, you got to sort of feel for them a little bit. Sorry, they beat the Roosters. So, you know, they can get these performances out. They just need to keep working on that consistency week in, week out, and making sure, big thing that I noticed, mentioning Lasone and Vete off the bench, they utilised their bench. I remember when I first started Footy Rants, that was something that I sort of critiqued them about a little bit, was they weren't really having any faith in anyone that was coming off the bench and doing a job for them. They were just relying on the experience of Lillyman, Mannering, Hoffman. And now that we see Lillyman not present and being in the Origin squad, that was going to mean that someone needs to, one, start in that side, and then two, someone else to play the minutes, because that other forward's probably not going to have the legs to play as many minutes as Hoffman would. So, and it worked. They played really well. So I think if you give blokes opportunities, they're gonna step up to the plate and they're gonna grow for you. So yeah, hopefully for the Warriors, this means a bit of momentum. And aside for the Broncos, I don't think it's too much of panic stations. It was you had a totally different spine. No Boyd, Milford into Origin, Nikorima changing spots, and Waddell started. So I think just based off that start, it was evident that they probably should have just started Nikorima or just left him to play 80 at 9. So again, I'll be surprised if you see Waddell wearing a Bronx jersey again during this Origin period. I honestly wouldn't. I'd just let Nikorima play 80. Alrighty, moving forward. What a cracker of a game this was. Always a back and forward affair between these two clubs, and ones that we know are both super physical. And unfortunately, Marcelo Montoya misses that opportunity early, and hindsight's beautiful, and you could say, what could have been, but the Sharkies, once they started to hold on to the ball a little bit more, everything started to flow a bit better, obviously. But where the Dogs hurt most was we're seeing here on the footage when James Graham goes off the field, with that shoulder injury, which is really unfortunate, especially for a guy his age. You don't want those continued shoulder injuries to keep appearing. And we see the damage that Branko Lee can cause. And they just stripped him for numbers there. And when you've got a big body like Branko Lee, he's going to be hard to stop from that far out. But it was just a case of possession and completions. Whichever team settled at the right time was going to go on to win it. And for the Sharkies, that was them. Jaden Brayley, we can see, look at that kicking game and the pressure that he's generating there. He'll have to come close. I think it'll be a toss-up probably between him and Nick Kotrick for Rookie of the Year, you'd have to say. Just the desire that he plays with. And I've had conversations with a few people about these rookies that burst onto the scene and are successful. More often than not, are ones that don't really set too much expectation about how they should perform against like other players within the NRL. That they've, obviously they're going to come up against some players that they idolise and grew up respecting, and the ones that seem to be able to disregard that quicker and just get on with their role seem to perform the best. And let's just wind this back. Let's wind this back. Paul Gallen, how good is that? Paul Gallen for me, it's good. I'm a massive Queensland fan, and I've never been much of a Gallen fan. But if you're doing that for me week in, week out for your club team, brother, hats off to you. Just to let you know some of his stats. 22 hit-ups, 240 metres, 27 tackles in 65 minutes. So keeping in mind he didn't play the whole game. And when you have efforts like that, and you create space for your half like you did here, Chad Townsend, you want your outside backs to finish the job in the way that they should. And we see here again, has this charge, gets underneath. If you see that coming, if you see Paul Gallen standing out, you know that he's getting that ball. Let's just have a look at this again. I love this shit. That's just real sloppy effort. That's just picking out a little man. And we set up for the field goal. Chad Townsend does his job. Seals the deal. So it's pretty evident as to why the Sharkies were more than happy to extend and prolong the career of Paul Gallen. When you're tossing up stats like that, that just gets you excited. And when you've got the support of experienced players like Luke Lewis, another special mention to Jason Bakuya in his game, one of his first games back, 11 hit-ups, 139 metres, 45 tackles in 58 minutes. So again, very, very high work rate. When you've got the experienced guys out there that are doing jobs for you in the forwards, especially when the Bulldogs are missing someone like a David Clemmer, like a Josh Jackson, you want to be taking advantages and exploiting those outlets, and they very much did that. Without Maloney, it was evident that there was a little bit of lack of direction there at times for the Sharks, but ultimately it was good to see Chad Townsend pull up his pants and fucking grab the game by the scruff of the neck when he needed to, and you know, it's not an easy thing when you're sort of, you know, yes, he's won a premiership, but you know, you got to look at it objectively. He does play second fiddle to James Maloney. James Maloney is the dominant half. So when the game's in the balance like that and you're expected to step up and perform, when you get a result like that, I'm sure Shane Flanagan would have been very, very impressed and super, super proud. So again, the Sharkies, they keep finding ways to win games. Their completion rates were actually a lot better this week. I think they were up over around 75%. And I don't think it was a case of, I think, you know, 9-8 scoreline, we're seeing it here in front of us right now. It was evident that a few stars were missing and a few of the gleam of the game with the lack of points being scored. But I think when you looked at it, Sharks versus Bulldogs, it's a good old-fashioned, hard-slugging affair that carries a lot of rich history in their battles together. So it was good to see that play out that way. And you know, I'd said in the preview that I thought the Dogs might have the better of them, and both teams really, they had the opportunity to get over the top of each other. You know, like we said from the top, Montoya missed that opportunity early. Luke Lewis drops one, Sasai Feki drops one. So, you know, you count the numbers there, and the Sharkies probably had a few more points up their sleeve, but just can't quite execute. You know, Sasai Feki, he's sort of lacking that little bit of consistency at the moment. He's very much a confidence player, so hopefully he gets back and just tidies up those finishes for his forwards who work so hard to give him those opportunities late in the game. Moving into what was my favourite game of the week. You know, they weren't really expected too much here, the Roosters. I don't think they were given too much of a chance down in Canberra. They hadn't won down there since 2010, and you know, I thought if they could stand up to their forwards in Boyd, Paulo, and Sia Soliola, that they'd be a massive chance. And they started really well. There was plenty of energy off the top. And we see there that Jake Friend opened the try scoring, so he scored in back-to-back weeks. But this left edge for the Roosters really cost him in this first 40 minutes. Ryan Madison and Luke Keary came up with 14 missed tackles between them for a total of 53 missed tackles as a team. How's that for a shot? Sia Soliola. I don't care if that's a big man or little man. Get around that. Oh, we're just seeing Luke Keary's chin just get barraged into his fucking sternum there. That was awesome. Love that. But yeah, this left edge got him in trouble a lot. Yeah, Madison and Keary, they need to be doing a better job there. I know they probably haven't played a great deal of footy together defensively, but you know, at the end of the day, NRL's NRL, and you need to be standing up and being accountable for your job. Yeah, so on top of that, for those 53 missed tackles, it's only completed at 65%, and the error count was 16-8. Again, we're just looking at some of this defense here from who I thought really shifted a lot of the momentum at the start of the second half for the Raiders, and that was Joe Tarpanay. We're having a look at a shot here that he gets on Jake Friend. He gets stung with a shoulder charge here, and if he gets suspended for that, that is fucking bullshit. That was a great shot. I'm going to play it again. I'm going to strip it back. Like, if we look here, if you're getting your body in front like that on a little man when you're leading, there is no way that you're going to get your right arm around. You don't need to. You've just fucking annihilated a bloke that's a foot shorter than you. Yeah, so I hope for all intent and purposes that that's not the case, and he gets off scot-free. and we'll just scooch that back again with the highlights that we see here. Austin gets on the outside. And this was a period of the game where the Raiders just couldn't really put the Roosters away. And Austin tries to sort of bluff his way to a try there. He was out and he dropped the ball. And after that, they just turned on. Well, this is how to bomb a try if you're the Roosters fans. Created all that space, and he had 2 unmarked players. I honestly don't know what was going through their mind. Look, he squares him up. He holds all the play up. Oh, Trent Robinson. Who would want to be an NRL coach, fair income? But yeah, still, despite all those stats not playing in their favour, when you got blokes like Joey Manu finishing tries like this for you, have a look at this. Just the awareness, the body awareness of these wingers. I know we already give Hoffman a big rap too. To finish things like that, it's outstanding, and we've seen a great battle all day. The awareness of Latrell Mitchell to dive early there, knowing the conditions, the dewy conditions down in Canberra, and coming up with the points. But the battle between himself and BJ Leilua and Rapana was really, really pleasing. There's plenty of animosity in there, but I guess this was evident of that error count. This Aiden Caesar try at the end that sealed the deal for the Raiders. You give a team enough opportunities, they're going to make you pay. So I guess the positives that you do take out of it as Coach Robinson, like if I'm a coach and someone sits me down and says, right, mate, at the end of the game, you're only going to have 65% completions, 53 missed tackles, and 16 errors. What do you think the scoreline looks like? It's not 24-16, that's for sure. And to be fair, it should have been a 2-point ball game. They should have only lost 18-16. I think you got to take the good with the bad. They've been a team that's in red hot form. Still could have capitalised with the players that they had out there, but for me, the new partnership of Keary and Watson didn't really take off. I think they're probably a bit too similar. They're both a bit too runny. I know that Mitchell Pearce is also a running half, but again, I say it sort of week in, week out. It's a little bit different. He's take it to the line, short ball nature, and is happy to sort of bury his nose through just because he's that bigger body, whereas Keary's that sort of zippy, effective, show and go, play short, play out the back, play short, play out the back, go. And he'll make you pay by beating you on the outside. But I think Connor Watson is something sort of similar to that. So for me, I think it was a bit too much of a like and a like. And defensively, because they're both smaller men, even though Watson does play in the middle, you could see that they weren't really comfortable with how things were playing out. And obviously with no Boyd Cordner, that's a big confidence decrease for Keary. You sort of realise how much work that Cordner does with Keary there. So just sort of little things for the Roosters, and that could have tipped the momentum and made sure that they went on and won the game. But in saying that, Michael Gordon kicks that goal, it goes to extra point. Maybe the Roosters do come over the top. So again, I think Ricky Stewart, on the other hand, would be a lot more disappointed than what Trent Robinson would be. If I'm a coach and I get sat down and say the opposition completed this, how much do you win by? I'm expecting at least, probably 30 points, 100%. And you could see that there was that frustration there in the probably between the 50 and 65th minute, that 15-minute period. They really thought they were going to step on the gas, and they just couldn't get over the top. They came up with some errors when they didn't need it, but I think Tarpanay was, he played less than 40 minutes, and I think because he got sort of shifted back to the bench, probably gave the shits a little bit by the look of it, and he just wanted to go out there and prove a point, and he was banging everyone. It was so good to see. So I think the forwards in Paulo, Tarpanay, Soliola, and Boyd, they just did enough. They didn't go above and beyond, but they did enough to ensure that they had enough go forward and that opportunities were created at times that we're going to benefit them. Just quickly switch back. Yeah, that we're going to benefit them. And one last final shout out. The young fella off the bench for the Roosters, Lindsay Collins. How about that mullet? If you haven't seen it, get on social media. I'm pretty sure there's memes popping up everywhere about it already. It was so good to see. Kid ripped in, had a good dig. Did a little bit of reading on him last night. Apparently he's a Queenslander. Spent a bit of time at the Broncos 20s and got his opportunity with the Roosters. Yes, they are though. So yeah, it was really, really good to see. So if you haven't seen that mullet, get involved. It's fucking legendary. I hope he gets, mate. If he keeps it, Trent Robinson, I think he just needs to get picked next week. If it means that one of your starters has to get kicked out, one of your Origin stars doesn't come back, well, too fucking bad, mate. The mullet has to stay. I mean, Lindsay Collins, you're my man. Footy Rants, let's make it happen. I want you on here, big man. Alrighty, guys. That's all from me for today's review edition, round 12 NRL. Enjoy your State of Origin Wednesday night. I'll endeavour to do a bit of a breakdown and try and keep the preview separate. So yeah, up the Queenslanders. I'm hoping this rumour about Thurston potentially playing was perhaps just a media stitch up and that he was going to play all along. But you know, I'm not going to hold my breath, and I still think that the New South Wales team is going to be too strong, and I'm tipping a New South Wales victory by 8. Alrighty, gang. Enjoy your footy and be safe at the start of this week. See ya!